Hi everybody, you're really welcome to day 6 of these videos. Thank you so much for joining me. Many of you have actually been here from the beginning of the week, and the whole concept behind this was to have 3 days of eco-printing boot camp, followed by the launch of my new ebook, and then be around to answer your questions about eco-printing in the dirty pot. So for those of you who don't know me, my name is Nicola Brown. I'm a textile artist based in rural Southeast Ireland. I'm a felt maker and eco-printer, and my passion is sharing eco-printing, growing my own plants, and sharing how to do this wonderful technique in a simple fashion without using traditional powdered mordants. So please drop me a comment, let me know where you're tuning in from. It's just fantastic seeing everybody from different parts of the world here. And as I say, many of you have been here each day this week, and tomorrow will be our final broadcast. So Mary is actually saying maybe we might do this again, or I might do it again for people who buy the book. Absolutely, I will do that once we get into 2022. So for those of you who don't know me, as I say, my name is Nicola. I live in Southeast Ireland, and I'm going to recap because some people are new here. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm just going to recap about what we have done starting from Monday. So the first thing that we did on Monday was I discussed about the #1 question people have. I answered that, and I discussed ways of achieving crisp, clear prints without using traditional powdered mordants. So what I use is a technique called the dirty pot, and that's where I'm using the composition of the pot metal to help influence the colors, the prints that I achieve, and also help make the pieces more light and washed fast. And if you're new to eco-printing without traditional powdered mordants, the absolute best pot is aluminium or aluminum. That will give you really attractive results. They're probably easier pots to get hold of, but certainly it's the most useful pot. You can modify the pot liquid by adding in more rusty metal and make everything darker, but aluminium by itself is wonderful. However, it doesn't mean that you can't eco-print in a stainless steel pot if you absolutely have to, because you can add some crumpled aluminium foil or tin foil into the pot, or some rusty metal, but you won't get as good results. And I'm going to share photos with you afterwards when I finish chatting. You won't get as good results as you will in the actual aluminium pot. So I cannot recommend enough that you get an aluminium pot for yourselves. So after people have, I recommend stripping it back to the basics. After you've stripped everything back to the basics, or if you're a beginner and you've used something that is guaranteed to give good results, such as onion skins, and you understand how to tie your bundles tightly and achieve crisp, clear prints, then the next question people have is which vegetation to use. And it's easy to think that the grass is always greener on the other side. So I have easy access to blackberry leaves, for example, here in Ireland, and they grow, they're just a weed in the hedgerow. They give wonderful fruit, which I use in the kitchen, but the leaves are marvelous for eco-printing. And one of the questions that has actually come in that I haven't necessarily talked about is different colors. Blackberry leaves can give wonderful purple tones on wool and silk. So they give marvelous purple on wool and silk. But after you've identified which vegetation to use, people then are wondering, can you print on cellulose fabric? Because it's much easier to start with wool and silk or cashmere or mohair, and cellulose fabric is more difficult to print on. So what I do is I make a homemade rust water solution. I dip the cellulose fabric in that for 40 seconds. And if I then print using blackberry leaves on cellulose fabric, the prints that I get will be either a very, very dark black or an inky purple black on linen, whereas they'll give a much warmer pinky purple on wool or silk. And so the whole concept behind my ebook is to give you, initially I had thought about maybe doing a tutorial, a PDF tutorial, but the ebook is more than a tutorial. And it's to help you dive deep into the dirty pot, but you need to strip everything back to the very basics first. And once you do that, the book, it's $29 and it's got over 60 pages. And by tomorrow night, when I'm dropping it into people's inboxes who have already ordered it, it may well have more than 60 pages. I'm sure it will. So it's an absolute step-by-step process. It goes from the beginning, from setting up your pot, the equipment you need, stripping it back to the basics, letting you know things that you can then add into your studio, so that if you want to go beyond the basics, you can. It gives plenty of tips and advice. So that's the book, and there is a link to order the book in the description of the video below. But I would like to say that I am getting a few emails with people just saying they've ordered the book and they're not quite sure how to access it. There is an automation set up, but clearly not everybody received the email. So tomorrow night, I will be giving everybody who orders the book before 11:59 p.m. GMT on Sunday, the 19th of December, you will get an extra special bonus. And so tomorrow night, if you have ordered by that time, you will get your an email with a link to the bonus, which is a wonderful mini online workshop with some really cool information and videos about eco printing on upcycled clothing. And you will also get a link to download the ebook. And there's a strict time on that. So if you do not get your order in by 11:59 tomorrow night, what's going to actually happen is you will just receive the ebook. Now, there's plenty in the ebook, as I say, over 60 pages. However, if you want the bonus, you really, really need to get that order in before 11:59. I'm just going to check on the comments to see, are there any actual questions coming in yet? Because I will answer some questions afterwards, but I want to share a few things with you first. I'm loving where everyone is coming from all over the world. This is just so fantastic. And I am going to make a map next week, and I am going to then be able to identify, hopefully, everywhere people have tuned in from. And I see that Tammy is here now, and Tammy's in California. And actually, Tammy had a few questions for me. She was wondering, could I share an image yesterday of bark, of eucalyptus bark prints? And in fact, Tammy, I have that for you today. So what I would like to share first, for those of you that may not have been with me earlier in the week, I'm just going to actually firstly just share the chapters of the book so you can see exactly what is in that. So here goes. So I'm not sharing any pages of the book except the cover. The first page. So obviously there is an introduction to eco printing in the dirty pot. There is health and safety in the studio. There is the absolute basics of successful eco printing. And I would like to also add that there are going to be checklists for you to download. So there's no necessity to download the full book. You can keep the book on your computer, on your phone, on your iPad or Kindle. I'm not sure about Kindle, it's a PDF file. But anyway, you can keep the book online, and then there will be these checklists for you to download with all the absolutely most important information, such as setting up the pot, or the checklist prior to eco printing and the step-by-step process. So fabric, I give you links to or names of companies where you can get fabric. I give you the ideal fabrics to eco print on, plenty about the processing pot, the heat source that you use, the additional supplies that make life very much easier. So those additional supplies, they're, things like the string that I like to use to tie my bundles with. I particularly like t-shirt yarn, but any natural twine that won't break if you really pull it really tightly with your hands. So they would be in the additional supplies, and all about the pipes that you can roll up your bundles on. How to set your dirty pot up for the first time, because it can be a little bit nerve-wracking, and people are concerned when they see that maybe their pot liquid isn't very dirty looking, or maybe their pot liquid is very dirty looking. So I go through the step-by-step stages of setting that up for the first time. And as far as I'm concerned, it can never be too dirty. That's just a personal thing. So don't worry if your pot liquid looks very dirty. How to make rust water. Very, very handy to have in the studio. Eco printing checklist prior to any eco printing session. Now that checklist would be the same whether you were going to print cellulose fabric, protein-based fabric, whether you were going to print clothing. No matter what you're going to eco print, that checklist is really handy to go through the night before, so that when the morning comes and you want to get going, you're not just rushing around trying to get everything organized. And then there's the basic step-by-step eco printing process, which will also be a checklist. Chapter 13 is all about processing your bundles. 14, opening bundles to reveal the prints. I have tips in that, because if you haven't eco printed before, it's as if all your birthdays and special seasonal holidays have come at the one time. It's so exciting. And because of this, it's still exciting to me years later. Because of this, it's very easy just to unroll your bundles really quickly and pull all the leaves and vegetation off. However, if you take your time and you make sure that you can see the vegetation as you unroll the bundle, that the vegetation sits on top of the fabric, a little bit like an open sandwich, and the fabric is bread and the vegetation is the sandwich topping. That way you can identify which vegetation has given which prints, and then whether you like the effect from them or not. So I go through that in the section about opening the bundles. Then I go, I just have a little bit about shadowing, which is repeat printing, and I'm going to show you some photos of that in a minute. So some people love it, such as me. Some people hate it, but it's all part and parcel of working in the dirty pot and knowing your fabric and knowing your vegetation. So then it's neutralizing, washing your fabric, finishing it. And with experience, you become very much more adept at modifying the color of your pot liquid. So I don't throw this liquid out. I use it for months on end. So I give clear tips for how you can modify the color of your pot liquid to achieve different effects in the pot. Then I share ways of, or suggestions for rolling and tying your bundles to get different effects, how to overprint, because let's face it, everybody has disasters at times. I had one particularly bad day myself when I'd had a very good day printing the previous day, and I made a subhuman effort. I printed from 6:30 in the morning until 10 at night, a whole series of silk scarves that were heading to a very, very big and important fair the following week. And from the huge batch of scarves, I only had 2 successful ones, and the others all had to be overprinted. So trust me, it happens everybody, probably more frequently than you think. And it's going to happen more often when you're not using traditional powdered mordants. However, with experience, it happens less often. But overprinting is a marvelous way of rescuing disasters. So then I give you some tips and advice about bundling big pieces, because once you're competent with smaller pieces, you're going to want to do blankets or some really large pieces of fabric. So I give you tips and advice about that. Very brief information about steaming. Oh, and also there is the information about printing your cellulose fabric, then eco printing on paper, and the checklists that you can download. So all in all, there are 24 chapters in the book, and at the current state tonight, there are over 60 pages, but there will be a few more tomorrow. So that's why you will not get it until late evening tomorrow, Irish time, but you will all get it tomorrow night, those of you who have ordered it. So Jane is asking, do I know what contributed. No, actually, Jane, I even though I was using vegetation I usually use, I actually think I was too ambitious. I tried to do too much in the one day, and maybe I missed out some small step, because I won't say I was rushing, but I was very tired. It was about day 3 of doing a lot of printing, and I just decided I'll just work like crazy. So it may be that I did something stupid and I didn't even understand what I did, but it does happen to everybody. I mean, the fabric wasn't ruined, but the prints just weren't good. So I don't know what it was. So I can't answer that question, but it does happen, everybody. And Caroline, I'm not quite sure what this is. If you want to refresh the leaves. Oh, do you mean if you want to reconstitute them? Yes, I discuss leaves and vegetation in the book, and which leaves and vegetation I recommend, how to store them, and how to reconstitute them. So I'm assuming that's what you're asking, but I do have a YouTube video. So if you look at my eco printing tips and tutorials, if you look at that playlist on YouTube, I have a good video all about different ways of gathering and storing your vegetation and saving it for future use, because some leaves are best if you freeze them, others are best if you dry them. So if you look at that YouTube video, that will give you some tips and advice. And Karen has a good question here. Is the type of silk important? Again, in the book, I give my recommendations for silk. So the heavier the fabric, or the tighter the weave of the fabric, think of it like blotting paper, or if you have a cheap paper towel and a more expensive paper towel, the heavier and more closely woven the fabric is, the better it takes the color. So the silk, I particularly like using a good quality silk satin that's approximately, or that's between a 12.5 and maybe a 14 mame. Silk is measured in mame, and that's the number of threads per meter or something, or the weight per meter. I'm not the best on that, and it's day 6 of the week, but mame is the term. So I think that the higher the mame, the crisper and the stronger the print, the more intense the color of the print. But it is more difficult when you go over about 14 mame and you start getting into silk that is more like upholstery silk. You really need to make sure it's washed very, very well before you actually before you print it, because it is more difficult to print, I found, for some reason. So yeah, so that's that. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually share some photos with you, and let's just share them. Okay, so I'm going to remove that from the stream, and I'm going to add this in. Okay, so here we have a silk dress, and this dress is printed with catalpa leaves. So those of you who have access to catalpa in warmer countries, I printed this dress when I was teaching in Kentucky a good few years ago. Okay, Jane, 14, not 40. Around 12 to 14 mame is good, not 40. So this particular dress here is probably about a 12 mame silk. Now this dress was actually an underslip, this from a dress I bought in a thrift store in Tahoe, I think, and the top of the dress was a chiffon, and this was the underneath, so it wouldn't be see-through. And the chiffon was a printed chiffon. So I'm always looking for anything interesting that I can work with. So a friend, I gave the top to a friend for a night dress, and then I printed the bottom. And there's a large green leaf on that is very similar to what we call dock here in Ireland. It's a type of a sorrel. I never managed to get to the bottom of what that leaf was, but it printed a beautiful green. But those brownish prints are from catalpa. Then the next one here, this is just lamb's wool. This is a sample, and I'm just showing this because Tammy was asking about bark. So you can see there are some diagonal lines near the top of that image, and there's bark there. So you can see where the fabric has been folded, and where one side of the bark was in contact with the fabric, it's a much more golden print, and it's a much more purple print up higher. And then those other leaves that are there are a Eucalyptus azura, a Eucalyptus gunnii, and the named variety is azura. So I do have named varieties of eucalyptus in the book, some of my favorites that are guaranteed to give you good results. This here is bark on linen. So this is eucalyptus bark on linen that had a 40-second dip in the rust water. That's the eucalyptus bark on wool. So you can see how the two different fabrics and the treatments that they got give a totally different result. And then we were discussing shadowing, and here again we have eucalyptus. So can you see that rather, actually I'm only just thinking it might look like a little bit of a rude shape up to either side of the center line. That's actually eucalyptus bark, and the leaves are eucalyptus leaves. So this particular piece is a lighter silk. So the lighter the mame of your silk, the more shadowing you will have. And I think that the mame of this was a 5 mame. So what happened in this case was I laid the eucalyptus leaves and bark down one side of the center line. Then I folded the fabric over. So you had a mirror image on either side of the center line. But because the vegetation printed so strongly, it then repeat printed as well. So there's only actually one piece of bark there. There aren't 4 pieces of bark. So the one piece of bark has just repeat printed going along the length of that particular scarf. I think when you actually do it, it becomes more obvious. Now here we have eucalyptus, an unnamed variety, on a heavy silk noil. So this silk, the purpley prints in the background are also coming from the eucalyptus. But they have just come through from the other side of the fabric. So it's sort of shadowed, and I particularly like this. Now, maybe other people don't like that, but I do like that. So let's see. So this is the top, the top that I was wearing the other day, made from organic HEM. And then the final, that final letter is a P. Please don't write that in the comments, the name of the fabric, because it's something that we're not supposed to say, I believe, on YouTube. So those darker, the very dark circles, which are more obvious here. I can't make that image bigger, I'm afraid. That's actually where tannin is coming out from a cut end of a leaf, and it's having a reaction with iron. But what I really wanted to show you with these is all of these pieces, each piece of fabric here, they have all been printed in a dirty pot by submerging. This was submerged as well. This particular pot was stainless steel with aluminium foil, in fact, and all the others were in aluminium pots with rusty metal. So you can see that you can get all these different effects from the same basic process. It's just fantastic, I think. Okay, so we have a question here. So Mary, well, I certainly wouldn't want something that was greasy going into my pot. I mean, when I get old pieces of rusty metal, I usually just give them, you know, a quick run under the garden tap outside. But if something was greasy, I would try and remove the grease from it, because you don't want grease to make oil marks on your fabric, Mary. But in relation to dirt and stuff, I just give them a brush and a very, very quick run under a tap, and that's it. Thanks very much. That's great. I think that's probably pretty much it for tonight. I just want to share the link to the book in the chat for those that may not have it. It is also in the it is also in the video description on YouTube. But okay, so here we have a question. Let's see. Well, you do get mold on your pot if you're not using it frequently, and there isn't really any way you can prevent that. I would get it here in Ireland, but only if I don't use it for a month or two. So what I would do is I would put a mask on and I would just skim that mold off, and then I would boil the pot again and it's perfect. I don't think there's any way you can totally prevent it, but you do not want to inhale the mold. Mary, you're going to have to just read the book, because but I would prepare the pot for a minimum of an hour, and then you can use it. But the more times you use the pot, the stronger your results become. But certainly you can use it after an hour. So don't stress. Once you read the book and you have everything everything in front of you, you'll see it exactly. Oh my goodness. I love the pork rinds. Oh my goodness. So that's interesting about the copper pots from Mexico. The copper doesn't give anything like the strong effect that the aluminium does, but it does also give beautiful results. So if you like peach and apricot tones, copper is excellent. But as a person new to eco printing, it would not be a pot I would recommend until you've already used aluminium, because certain vegetation won't give you the same prints at all, or the strength of prints that you get from aluminium. And an aluminium or a cast iron pot also make the pieces very much more light and wash fast. I don't believe that copper will give the same effect. And this is this is the top that I was really thankful somebody sent me, somebody who I met at a show. I didn't make this particular top, and it's really nice. It's an Irish designer. It's a very beautiful wool. I think it was quite an expensive top. She had bought it for herself, and she said she'd never worn it, and she loved my eco printing. She bought a piece of mine, and then one day this just arrived in the post with a lovely card, and she said she wanted me to eco print it. But when I discovered that it fitted me, I just thought, oh, I'll wear it as it is, and unless I'm stupid and I go and stoke the boiler like I did the other day with some cream trousers on and got soot all over them, I'll keep this clean, and then it can show off eco prints. And then if I do happen to get it dirty, I will then print it later. Hi, Paolo. Very nice to see you. Or Ella, apologies. I just see, yeah, Australian living in South Italy. Hi. Okay, so, okay. So, it's very simple. I can't really show you. I'll just hold up a piece of paper. So how can you print them to show prints on both sides of the scarf? So it depends how wide the scarf is, but excuse me one second while I tear a piece of paper out of a pad, a clear piece of paper. Okay, so here is a piece of paper. Let's say this is the scarf. And you just put it on your table and you put your vegetation on top of that and you roll it up. As you roll it up, the vegetation from this side is going to print on the underneath as well. So you will get prints on both sides of the scarf. If your scarf is very wide, you can fold the scarf in half. So you can put prints down half the fabric, fold it in half, and then you can add extra vegetation here and then roll it up, and that vegetation will print on this piece here. So in the book, you know, I have photographs of rolling up pieces. Thanks so much, Sarah, or Sarah. I'm not quite sure. I'm guessing it's Sarah. Thank you very much. Make sure you buy it before. Let me put that time up again. Make sure you buy the book before 1 minute to midnight tomorrow, and then you will get that extra bonus of the mini online workshop about eco printing on upcycled clothing. You can trust me on that upcycled clothing is such a fun thing to do. I really absolutely love it. So oh, we have Portugal in the house. Brilliant. If anybody has any last question now, please just put it in the comment now. And otherwise, I'm going to be wrapping up this whole wonderful week with you all. I'm going to be wrapping up with one final live stream tomorrow evening. The time again will be 6 o'clock. And then very late tomorrow evening, anybody who has ordered the book will be getting everything in an email into their inbox. So it's been such good fun. I'm actually going to miss chatting to you all on a regular basis. Hey, Rosie, how are you? You're very welcome, Nancy. Thank you very much. Beautiful part of the world that Judy is living in. Nancy, you're very welcome. In fact, Judy, I have a painting that I'm looking at behind my computer that I bought in Santa Fe Fine Art Gallery many years ago. So a beautiful part of the world. So any final questions, ladies, gentlemen? Yeah, absolutely. So Jan has a question about both sides of a felted vessel. Absolutely. The one thing I would say about felt vessels, Jan, you need less vegetation than you think you need on them. So that's just a tip for you. Don't put too much on, and make sure you use a metal pipe and you will get really beautiful results. In January, towards the end of January, I'm going to be launching a membership program, and it's going to be like at a really special offer for the first, it's going to be available for a limited length of time and for the first people who take it. And things like felt vessels and, you know, all sorts of different techniques with eco printing will be something that we can work through in the membership program. It's a monthly membership program. But certainly for felt vessels, I recommend not that much vegetation, and definitely because a vessel isn't that big, unless it's absolutely huge, you're going to see beautiful results. And Lexi, thanks for reminding me. It's going to be great to stay in touch with everybody. And I have set up a new Facebook group. It's called Nicola Brown Eco Printing and Wet Felting. And I've posted a link to that in the comments, but it's also in the video description, or will be on YouTube. So if you're watching this as a replay, have a look in the video description and you'll see a link to the Facebook group. And while it's not something that I will be answering questions on a daily basis, it is a place where everybody can stay in touch. And it's a place where you can upload pictures of what you're doing. And I certainly will be happy to answer questions at times, and, you know, obviously moderate things and share things. So it's a really nice place that we can all get to know each other better. So let me just see any final comments. Oh, I would love some snow, Lynn. I would love some snow. Anyway, I think there are no more questions now, but if any questions come in after the live stream ends, I will deal with them tomorrow night, which is when I wrap up this wonderful week celebrating the ebook launch. Thank you so much for joining me. Thank you so much, all of you who have already bought the book. I'm absolutely blown away by it. You're very welcome, Tammy. I just knew you wanted to see them, so I just collated those images for you. So anyway, thank you all so much. I'm going to end the broadcast now, and I will hopefully see some of you tomorrow night. Tomorrow will be the end of the week, and those of you who've bought the book will get it tomorrow as well. Over and out from Clasheen. Thank you so much.